The sky was still ink blue when Alex Carter eased his sedan out of the suburban driveway, just as the first hint of dawn brushed the horizon. A crisp breeze slipped through the half-open window, nipping at his cheeks, while the compact camera rig and microphone pack resting on the passenger seat stood ready, the very tools that had transformed him from a small-town reporter into a YouTube investigative force. He tapped Start Live on his dashboard-mounted smartphone and spoke softly into the dashcam. Good morning, everyone. This is Alex Carter, coming to you live from the outskirts of Mobile County, Alabama. I'm headed to the Crestview Media Center to kick off an expose on routine traffic stops and the question of whether profiling plays a role. His tone was calm but charged with purpose, adjusting the rearview camera until it captured both the empty road behind him and the clips from past investigations displayed on his screen. Alex reminded himself of what viewers expected: total transparency, no hidden footage, no off-the-record moments. Today's episode would put him squarely in the line of fire, not just as an observer, but as the subject of a traffic stop himself. With a smooth turn of the wheel, he merged onto the highway. The engine's steady hum became a backdrop to his racing thoughts. In his mind, he rehearsed the segments he planned to film later: an emotional montage of unjustified stops, a sit-down with a civil rights attorney, a side-by-side comparison of body camera footage, and an open line for viewers to share their own experiences. The most daring part, he knew, would be the live test of letting the next patrol car decide his fate. As the dawn light deepened into soft lavender and coral, Alex felt the speed of the car edge up ever so slightly above what felt comfortable. He shrugged at the camera. Even the best drivers have an off moment, he quipped, preparing himself for the inevitable challenge. Without warning, red and blue lights shimmered in the side mirror. A patrol cruiser, unmarked save for its rooftop bar of flashing colors, drifted into his lane. His heart rate spiked, but he didn't flinch. He flipped on his interior light for the live feed, ensuring every detail would be visible to his audience. Taking a deep breath, he signaled and guided the sedan onto the gravel shoulder. The chat window erupted with messages urging calm and resolve. Alex cut the engine, lifted his palms against the windshield in a universal gesture of peace, and stepped out of the car. He retrieved his driver's license and press credentials from the console, clipping the gleaming metal badge of Crestview Media Center to his lapel. By the time he fully emerged onto the shoulder, the patrol officer's door was swinging open. In that suspended moment, everything fell away except one immutable truth. A lone black journalist, exposed in the dim morning light and broadcast live to countless viewers, was about to face the power of a uniform. What would come next, story or struggle, hung in the air with the rising sun. The patrol cruiser's engine cut out with a soft thrum, leaving only the distant hum of early traffic and the whisper of wind across the shoulder. Officer John Wilson stepped into view, his polished black boots crunching on gravel. He was lean, squared-shouldered, and wore the department's crisp white shirt and navy tie beneath a heavy utility belt. His face was set, mouth a thin line, no hint of the tired smile he might have shown after a 12-hour shift. In his hand, he held a slim flashlight, not yet lit, but its weight and his grip spoke of readiness. Alex remained at the driver's side window, palms still visible on the glass. He tilted his camera downward, just enough to let Wilson see the lens, then raised it again. The live viewer count ticked upward in the corner of the frame. Wilson paused a step away, shoulders stiff, and cleared his throat. "License and registration," he said, voice flat as asphalt. Alex unbuckled his seatbelt slowly, hands visible and still holding nothing but a tidy stack of documents. He slid his credentials, driver's license, press pass, and media center ID, through the rolled-down window. Wilson snatched them and peered at the plastic cards as though they might dissolve if handled too roughly. The press pass bore Alex's name and photo, along with the holographic seal of Crestview Media Center. But the officer's eyes flicked past it to the man behind the wheel, a tall black journalist in a crisp white shirt. "No, I clocked you at 50 miles per hour," Wilson said, tapping the edge of the registration folder against the doorframe. 45 is the limit here. You sure you weren't racing?" His words carried the familiar lilt of suspicion, the kind that had shadowed too many black drivers before. Alex kept his voice steady. Officer, I'm aware I was a few miles over. I'd rather resolve this professionally. I'm on my way to cover a story on traffic stops. You're part of that story tonight. Everything I record goes on the record. He offered a small, neutral smile, hoping to ease the taut set of Wilson's jaw. Wilson's lips curled in a dismissive twist. Save the spiel for social media. We don't need press getting in the way. He leaned closer, flashlight now shining off the credentials. Are you sure that badge is real? There's been chatter about fake press IDs circulating. A flicker of indignation crossed Alex's face, but he swallowed it. He recognized this tactic. Cast doubt on the messenger so you can ignore the message. You can verify it with the media center, he said calmly. Or contact my editor. He'll confirm I'm legitimate. Wilson folded Alex's papers and tucked them into his vest pocket, then tapped the dash cam mounted to the windshield. I'm going to need you to turn that off. He pointed at the tiny red recording light. Federal consent laws don't apply here. At that, Alex stepped back, keeping his shoulders open. Sir, I'm recording in a public space. If you believe I'm breaking the law, please cite the statute. Otherwise, I'll continue documenting. Wilson's eyes narrowed. His hand drifted to the holster at his hip. A moment stretched between them, morning light flickering across two determined faces. Behind Alex, the live chat buzzed. He's baiting you! Don't back down. Whatever happened next would be captured in full. In that charged silence, the weight of centuries of unjust stops hung heavier than any speed limit. The moment Alex clicked, "Go live," the world exploded around him. His face filled the frame, calm but resolute, as the view counter ticked upward by the second. Behind him, the early morning highway stretched into a blur of tarmac and pale sunlight. His voice, measured and even, carried over the soft hum of distant cars. Good morning, everyone. You're watching Alex Carter, live on Highway 87 outside Mobile County. I'm experiencing an unscheduled traffic stop. Let's see why. Within seconds, the chat window flooded with comments. Strangers poured in from every time zone, their messages scrolling in a river of green and white. Stay safe, Alex. Don't let him intimidate you. This is what profiling looks like. Alex kept the camera trained on the officer's face as John Wilson stepped forward, the early glare catching the badge on his chest. Wilson's jaw tightened when he realized his own image was being broadcast to hundreds of viewers. Wilson barked an order to shut off the camera. Alex's response was soft, almost conversational. Officer, I'm in a public place. The Supreme Court has long held that recording on duty officers is protected speech. He cited the landmark ruling, trusting that the weight of precedent might slow the rising tension. The live audience hummed with approval. A few cars slowed to watch the exchange through their windshields on the shoulder, engines idling. As Wilson's eyes flicked between Alex and the dashcam, guilt and impatience warred across his face. Alex took a deliberate breath and lowered his tone even further. He asked direct questions: why he was being singled out, whether the officer had ever stopped a white driver going the same speed. Each question landed with crisp clarity, forcing Wilson to choose between a factual answer or an admission of bias. The officer's hand hovered near his holster. The crowd on screen exploded with concern. A pair of local bystanders, a middle-aged white couple, ventured forward, startled and uncertain. They whispered among themselves. Then one of them spoke up. Officer, is everything all right here? Wilson turned briefly to acknowledge them, and in that instant, Alex pivoted the camera to include their anxious faces. He kept talking, framing the stop as part of a larger story about accountability. The couple nodded, their unease now mirrored on the live stream. Tension rippled through the air as Alex pressed on, unwavering. His calm insistence transformed what could have been a private confrontation into a public reckoning. Even as Wilson struggled for words, Alex's voice remained steady, unafraid. A singular reminder that truth, once broadcast, can be a powerful force for change. In that charged morning light, the asphalt shoulder became the stage for a broader conversation, one that could no longer be ignored. By the time Alex Carter ended the live stream, the first waves of notifications were already crashing over his phone. Within minutes, supporters and critics alike inundated his inbox, tagging him in posts, on every social platform imaginable. His original 13-minute broadcast exploded to hundreds of thousands of views in its first hour. The algorithm hungry for the unfiltered confrontation between a lone black journalist and a white patrol officer. News alerts blinked across mobile screens. Journalist live streams traffic stop, claims racial profiling. Dashcam confrontation sparks outrage. Number sign, stop profiling trends nationwide. Meanwhile, local news outlets scrambled to catch up. By mid-morning, Crestview's own ticker rolled the footage alongside national networks dissecting every frame. Pundits replayed the moment Alex calmly invoked Supreme Court precedent. Civil rights commentators lined up for live interviews, debating the deep history of unbiased enforcement and systemic bias. Even late-night hosts teased the clip, juxtaposing the defiant calm of the journalist with the stiff defensiveness of Officer Wilson. A swell of white viewers admitted on camera that they had never considered how seldom they face such scrutiny, while black activists underscored the painful familiarity of being stopped just because. Across town, a small group of residents coordinated a peaceful demonstration in front of the Mobile County Courthouse. Flyers that borrowed Alex's live stream thumbnail invited neighbors of all races to stand together against profiling. By afternoon, dozens had gathered with homemade signs reading, "Justice in the open" and "Eyes on the badge." Reporters interviewed a white teacher who confessed she'd joined only after seeing her students' fear mirrored in Alex's eyes. An elderly black pastor led a prayer circle, invoking the strength of truth shining through technology. Alex himself watched all this unfold from a tiny studio cubicle inside Crestview Media Center. His producer, Aaron, flitted back and forth, adjusting camera angles for a scheduled debrief segment. Aaron's eyes were bright. "This is bigger than any story we've ever done. We need to steer the narrative. Get the prosecutor's office on record." Alex nodded, already drafting questions in his mind for tomorrow's interview with the county attorney. Despite the surge of adrenaline, he briefly paused to acknowledge the enormity of what had happened. A single live stream had pierced the usual media haze and forced a reckoning. Public pressure mounted visibly. City council members posted statements promising an independent review of traffic stop practices. A civic tech group launched an online petition demanding mandatory body camera footage be publicly available. Major advocacy organizations, both white-led and black-led, amplified the call for reform, linking back to Alex's footage as irrefutable evidence. Even in a suburban church service that evening, the sermon referenced the power of bearing witness in praise of the journalist who refused to look away. As dusk fell, Alex sat alone at his desk, reviewing the day's analytics, view counts, demographic breakdowns, peak engagement times. He allowed himself a moment of quiet pride, then leaned forward to draft his closing remarks for tomorrow's follow-up. The air still crackled with possibility. What began as a routine drive had ignited a conversation rippling from a lonely highway shoulder all the way to the halls of power, and Alex knew this was only the beginning. The morning air inside the Mobile County Courthouse was thick with anticipation as residents, journalists, and legal observers gathered in the stately marble foyer. Banners reading, "Transparency Now" and "Protect Our Rights" fluttered in the breeze from handheld signs. Alex Carter arrived just before the hearing began, flanked by his attorney and his producer, Aaron, whose notebook was already brimming with questions for the county attorney. Reporters from local and national outlets eyed him as he climbed the narrow stairs, the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing on his shoulders. Inside the wood-paneled courtroom, sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of empty seats that would soon fill with curious citizens. The judge, a composed figure in black robes, presided over the proceedings with measured solemnity. Behind him sat the county prosecutor, a white man known for his meticulous approach, and at the defense table, Officer John Wilson, his crisp uniform taut with tension. Alex's heart pounded as he took his place at the witness stand, the microphone poised before him like a spotlight on truth itself. The prosecutor began by outlining the scope of the inquiry, an official review of whether Officer Wilson had engaged in racial profiling during the early morning stop. He presented the dashcam footage in full, projecting the video onto a large screen so that every jurist, attorney, and spectator could see Alex's calm precision and Wilson's mounting discomfort under live scrutiny. As the video played, murmurs rippled through the gallery. Even hardened officers taking notes leaned forward in their seats. When it was Alex's turn to testify, his voice carried clearly throughout the chamber. He recounted the details of that dawn drive, the exact moment he noticed the flashing lights, how he activated his live stream, and the precise language Officer Wilson used when demanding his credentials. His memory of Wilson's dismissive glance at the press badge and the detective's insistence that he turn off that camera struck a chord with jurors who recognized the power imbalance on display. Counsel for the defense then rose to cross-examine. He probed Alex's motivations, suggesting the journalist might have provoked the encounter for sensational footage. But Alex stayed composed, explaining that his intent was always to document public interactions in a lawful, transparent manner. He pointed out that he had moved to the shoulder immediately, fully complied with requests for license and registration, and only resisted orders to disable his recording device, a right upheld by multiple precedents. Next, the prosecutor called two eyewitnesses to the stand, a white couple who had slowed their car to watch the stop, and an off-duty EMT who had been passing by. Both testified that Alex had behaved respectfully, hands raised in a peaceable gesture, and that Officer Wilson had taken an unusually aggressive tone from the outset. Their recollections matched the dashcam transcript almost verbatim, reinforcing the narrative of an unjustified, biased stop. The judge then asked to hear from Internal Affairs, which presented Officer Wilson's patrol log and training records. A supervising sergeant admitted that Wilson had no prior traffic stop violations, but had never completed the newly mandated implicit bias workshop. The county attorney seized on this lapse, arguing that systemic training gaps contributed to officers relying on gut instincts that disproportionately targeted black drivers. After hours of testimony, the county attorney stood to deliver his recommendation. He urged the court to issue a formal reprimand for Officer Wilson, require him to undergo immediate bias awareness retraining, and to revise the department's traffic stop policy to mandate recording all stops when feasible. He also proposed that the department publish quarterly reports on stops by race and outcome. In closing, the judge acknowledged the gravity of the findings and announced a written order to be released within 2 weeks. He affirmed the importance of upholding citizens' rights to document police activity and praised Alex for his professionalism under pressure. As the gavel fell, a collective sigh swept through the courtroom, relief mixed with resolve. Emerging into the late afternoon light, Alex felt the weight of the day lift from his shoulders. Community members who had filled the benches approached him with gratitude, while reporters clamored for comment. Aaron slipped an arm through his, whispering that the court's ruling would headline tomorrow's follow-up. In that moment, Alex realized that the confrontation on a lonely highway shoulder had blossomed into a powerful catalyst for justice, proof that one voice, once amplified, could prompt real change. As dusk settled over Mobile County, the high school gymnasium hummed with quiet anticipation. Folding chairs formed a wide circle beneath fluorescent lights, each seat labeled with a name: community leaders, civil rights advocates, neighborhood residents, and, somewhat hesitantly, Officer John Wilson. Alex Carter sat near the front row, camera rolling on a tripod to capture every moment. A local pastor, chosen by the city council to moderate, stood and welcomed everyone, reminding them that tonight wasn't about blame, but about listening. Officer Wilson cleared his throat as he rose. His uniform jacket was neatly pressed, but his shoulders bore the weight of recent headlines. "I came here tonight to say I'm sorry," he began, voice unsteady. "I realize now that I let fear and assumptions guide me, and I subjected a citizen, and a journalist doing his job, to an unjust stop. I'm committed to learning why that happened, and to fixing it." He glanced toward Alex, who nodded slightly, then turned back to the circle. A hush fell as Wilson admitted he'd skipped the department's implicit bias training, explaining that he'd thought it optional rather than essential. The pastor invited Alex to speak next. Alex described the morning of the stop not as an isolated incident, but as one thread in a broader tapestry of experiences shared by black drivers across America. He spoke of the power of recording in real time, of turning a private injustice into public reckoning, and of what it felt like to transform fear into empowerment. His words were measured but impassioned, bridging the gulf between the uniform and the community. A white school teacher who had watched the live stream live tweeted in real time, then raised her hand. She confessed she hadn't realized how often she, as a white driver, zipped through that same stretch of highway without a second thought. Hearing Officer Wilson's story tonight, I finally understand how big a difference a few miles per hour can feel, she said. A black business owner spoke next, describing a close friend who'd paid thousands in tickets after repeated stops, tickets that vanished once body cam footage emerged. Their voices wove together, affirming the necessity of policy and human empathy. At the circle's center, the chief of police, his own badge gleaming, announced concrete steps. Every officer would complete an accredited bias awareness course within 30 days. All traffic stops would default to body camera recording, and a civilian oversight committee would review complaints monthly. He also invited community members to ride along on patrols and to meet officers in informal settings, breaking down barriers, one conversation at a time. Applause rippled through the room. Officer Wilson returned to his seat, looking both relieved and determined. He turned to Alex and quietly said, "Thank you for standing your ground, and for giving me the chance to stand up tonight." Alex smiled, recognizing that this exchange of accountability and grace was the real story. People confronting discomfort to forge genuine change. As the crowd dispersed into the warm evening air, handshakes, hugs, and earnest promises exchanged, Alex powered down his camera, aware that tonight's dialogue would echo far beyond this gymnasium, into policy revisions and living rooms alike. A gentle morning light filtered through the windows of the newly renovated council chamber as residents and officials gathered once more. The weight of the previous months seemed to melt away in the warmth of fresh paint and polished wood. In the center of the room, a long oak table bore the signatures of community leaders, law enforcement representatives, and citizen advocates, each name a promise that the hard-fought reforms would not fade into obscurity. Alex Carter stood at the edge of the chamber, camera poised, ready to capture this moment of real change. When the county council chair rose to speak, her voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had witnessed too many empty declarations. She announced that every traffic stop in the county would now be recorded on certified body cameras, with unedited footage to be made available for public review. She described the new training program, developed in partnership with civil rights experts, designed to help officers recognize and examine their own unconscious biases. Each policy shift was more than a procedural tweak. It represented a collective commitment to rebuild trust one interaction at a time. As the crowd erupted into applause, Alex felt a surge of relief and purpose. He approached Officer Wilson, who was seated beside the police chief. The officer's posture had changed since that fraught dawn months ago. Now he leaned forward, attentive and open. Alex extended his hand and Wilson clasped it firmly, eyes meeting in a moment that transcended the uniform and the lens. No words were needed. Both men understood that accountability had given way to partnership. That evening, Alex uploaded his final installment in the series, a portrait of a community that refused to look away. The video wove together scenes from the council chamber with clips of neighborhood dialogues, ride-along patrols where residents and officers rode side by side, and testimonials from drivers of every background who spoke about feeling seen and heard. His closing voiceover spoke not of victory over a single person, but of victory over fear itself. The fear of speaking out, the fear of being unheard, and the fear of confronting truth. In the quiet that followed, as reactions poured in from across the country, Alex allowed himself a moment to reflect. What had started as a routine drive to cover injustice had rippled outward, inspiring similar initiatives in neighboring jurisdictions. Small victories, freshly implemented trainings, open archives of stop and frisk data, community forums began to add up. And though the work was far from finished, the sunrise on that transformative morning proved that when one determined voice shines a light on injustice, it can illuminate a path toward lasting change.